All right, great. I think we're up and running with the recording. The slides are here, so we are good to go. Thank you all so much for joining this training this afternoon. My name is Adi Nochur. I am a senior transportation planner at MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I'm joined by my colleague Kasia Hart on our government affairs team, formerly of our transportation team. And we're just so appreciative for all the work you've been doing to date on the WestMetro parking study. And we're excited to use this time together to really drill down on the next phases of data collection that are going to set us up for success for this project. So I just want to run through a quick agenda. We'll do a quick round of introductions just to get a sense of who's on the call. I'm excited to get to know all of you and work with you. We'll do a quick overview of the parking study just so we have that shared context together. We'll have a discussion of successes and challenges to date. And then we'll talk about some more specific next steps and resources for the next phases of this project. The survey gathering, which I know all of you have actively been engaged in, but also wanting to make sure we're pivoting to scheduling and conducting the overnight parking counts as well. So we really have all the data we need to present you with the final report and analysis that's going to further your local affordable housing goals. So again, really excited to work with you all on this initiative. This isn't just going to be us me talking at you. We'll pause for Q&A and discussion at a few points throughout this presentation. You're also welcome to use the chat to input questions and comments as well. And we'll wrap up by 5 o'clock. This recording we'll share with you afterwards, as well as the slide deck. So don't worry about having to frantically jot notes down. And we'll share a number of other resources with you as well that we'll reference throughout this training. So you all have all the tools you need to get set up for success. And so with that, let's dive into introductions. As our first item, again, Adi Nochur with MAPC, and I'll pass it off to Kasia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kasia Hart. I'm currently a policy analyst with the government affairs team at MAPC, but as Adi mentioned, I was part of some of the earlier iterations of this study. So excited to be here as a resource if any questions arise. Do you want me to pass to the next person, Adi?
Sure, Kasia. Yeah, let's do it popcorn style.
All right, I will go to the next person on my screen, and that is Larry.
Larry Field, Watertown. I'm a housing planner here. Okay. I'm supposed to pass it on. Elizabeth Rust. Liz Rust.
Hi, I'm Liz Rust. I wear many hats, but today I am the Concord counter.
And Liz, you want to pass it on?
Oh, I'm going to pass it on to Susie. I'll pass it on to Susie.
Thanks, Liz. I'm Susie. Sorry about the echo. I am the newest member of the team working under Liz at the Regional Housing Services Office. Oh, pass it on. Adam?
All right, great, thanks. I'm Adam DeShano. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development for the town of Sudbury. And I'm going to pass it over to Robert Hummel.
Robert Hummel here on behalf of town of Belmont. I'm actually in the car, so my video won't be on, but I'm here listening in.
All right, since Robert's got his camera off, I'll just pass it to Eamon to keep us moving along.
Hi, everyone. Eamon Bensavengo, Housing Development Planner, City of Newton. And I'll pass it over to Nevina.
Thanks, Eamon. Hi, all. I'm Nevina. I use she, her, hers. I'm the Community Engagement Planner with the City of Newton. And I'll pass it to Amanda Berman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Berman. I'm the Director of Housing and Community Development with the City of Newton.
And then I believe we also have Kat with the City of Newton.
Hi, yes. Hello, I'm Kat. I also use she, her, hers. I'm just turning my camera off because I've been having internet issues all day, so trying to spare myself from that for this last meeting. And I am a planning associate in Newton. Yeah, I think that's everyone except maybe Tony, but Tony looks a little busy.
All right, well, maybe we'll come back to Tony later, and you know, I'm sure I know folks are multitasking, but we'll have all this available once again for folks. Well, again, thank you all so much for taking the time on a Thursday afternoon to join this call with us. We're really, again, excited to work with you on this study and to chart out some next steps with all of you. So I think just a refresher for everyone as to why we're doing this work. Getting parking right matters for a whole host of reasons. And I know all of you who are part of the WestMetro Home Consortium are particularly interested in this study because you want to investigate parking as a potential barrier to affordable housing production. Not only is parking expensive to build, but it also takes up a lot of space. So when you build excess parking, it means you can build fewer housing units, and those units that you are able to build are that much more expensive. So reducing housing costs is a critical part of this equation. Helps encourage more sustainable transportation because surprise, surprise, if you build for cars, people are going to show up with their cars. And we really want to discourage that as part of our goals for a sustainable and more equitable greater Boston region. And of course, alleviating congestion and reducing greenhouse gas emissions ties in to that as well. And you can see this graphic from our Perfect Fit Parking website that really encapsulates kind of what things might look like if you have high parking requirements, but if you're able to bring that down, you can build more housing, you can provide more transit access, more open space and green space, all of the kinds of things that we want to encourage for a more sustainable and equitable region. And we have great precedent to draw from here. Kasia managed a previous round of this Perfect Fit Parking research, working primarily with communities north of Boston, collecting data from nearly 200 residential multifamily buildings and finding that nearly over 25% of the spaces, 3 out of 10 of the parking spaces provided at these multifamily housing sites were sitting empty during peak demand. So there's a real clear mismatch between supply and demand, which might exist in the WestMetro Home Consortium region as well. And so we really want to investigate that with this study. And we found in our first round of research that the key factors that drive parking demand are parking supply. No surprise, if you build it, they will come, as well as transit accessibility and the percentage of deed restricted affordable units. And you can find the full study, the executive summary and more detailed research and technical analyses available at perfectfitparking.mapc.org. So that's a snapshot of where we've been, and where we're headed now is we want to replicate this study with all of you, and again are super appreciative that all of you have been engaged in this effort. So as far as the timeline goes, we really want to use this next month to make another push on the property survey to gather the initial data from multifamily property owners and managers. We also want to use the next month to start reaching out to multifamily property owners and managers to schedule these overnight parking counts to actually ground truth what's going on at these properties in terms of how many spaces they have and how many vehicles are parking there. So for the folks who are ready to do that, we certainly encourage you to start making moves in that direction. And we'll talk more about that as we get into this presentation. And then certainly in this month and in May is when we want to support all of you in getting out and conducting the overnight parking counts at these multifamily housing sites so we can see what the actual parking utilization looks like. So these next 2 months are really critical for the data collection components of this survey. And then as we move into the summer, in July, MAPC is going to take all the great data, working in partnership with all of you, and we're going to analyze and evaluate that data. We have a really great data services team that we worked closely with on the last round of the study, and we'll work with them again to do that analysis. And then by October is when we want to produce that final report and share it with all of you and the other folks who are participating in the study who couldn't be here today. And that study will really be a tool that all of you can use to change your local parking requirements in a way that furthers your affordable housing and sustainability and equity goals on a community level and on a regional level as well. So I think we have a really good course of action charted out. We'll get into some more specifics on the data gathering pieces in the slides that follow. But we do want to take a moment to pause and hear from all of you. We'd love to hear any questions you might have that we can sort of clarify at a high level, and certainly about any successes and challenges to date that you want to share with the group as well. So we'll open it up for a bit before we continue on. Elizabeth, I see you have a hand, so let's
Thank you. Yeah, so do we, who could provide what surveys have been completed by the property managers?
I can certainly do that. We've been getting the surveys on an ongoing basis. And I've been trying to go into the back end on our, we use Qualtrics as our survey tool. So I've been trying to check that on a somewhat regular basis to see which properties are completing the survey. So then you all know which ones to follow up with. So I'm happy to continue doing that and sharing that with you.
Okay.
Any other questions folks have, sort of at a high level, or about the study in general? What about successes and challenges folks are encountering? What's working well? What's been tricky? Are there sort of key things that folks feel like they need to move this along? You know, again, happy to hear from folks here. And I see we have a couple new folks who've sort of been joining. If folks want to introduce themselves who haven't had a chance to yet, we welcome you to do that now as well.
Well, so I'll jump in and introduce myself since I had a phone call right at the start of this. I'm Tony Fields, the planning director here in Bedford. I think we find very high parking utilization in our multifamily projects because we're suburbs and most everybody drives somewhere here. So I'll be curious if we come anywhere near the 30% vacant spaces you found in the prior analysis. Yeah, otherwise we're recovering from an interestingly nasty town meeting and see where we go from here.
Thanks, Tony, for sharing. I know there have been some issues around the Minuteman extension, which is what I'm guessing you're referring to. And certainly the first perfect fit parking study was a lot of more inner core Boston municipalities that might have better transit access than perhaps some of the more suburban towns that some of you might be working in. So it will be interesting to kind of ground truth that analysis. We might find something different, but we want this to be a useful product that can inform the work you all are doing. So I think that it's a good point for us to keep in mind. We might not necessarily expect to see the same results that we might have found in communities closer into Boston. Any other questions or comments that folks want to share before we get into some more specific next steps? Okay, hearing none, we'll move along, and maybe as we get into some of the more specific discussion, we can surface some of those issues. Kasia, anything you want to add here before we move on?
No, I think I'm all set.
All right, so let's keep moving along and getting into it. So completing the survey gathering. So we really want to use the month of April to try and wrap this up to the extent possible. Some of this might trickle into May, but I think the month of April is really when we want to make a strong push to get as many of the surveys in from multifamily property owners and managers as possible. We know that a lot of you have probably been emailing these owners and managers and you might have been getting a decent response to date. And again, like I said, we can provide you all with breakdowns of which properties have responded to help you with that follow-up. I believe we've provided you all email templates that we can use, that you can use, and we can share that again as part of the follow-up coming out of this training. But at this point, for some of the properties you might not have heard from, we would really encourage you all to shift from email blasts to doing more targeted one-on-one outreach. And really, if you're not getting a response from email, we would really encourage you all to start phone banking those individual property owners and managers, calling them up. We'll provide you with the phone script to support you in doing so. And actually, completing the survey while you're on the phone with them. And so we have, many of you have been sending out the link to the online survey, which is great. For the purposes of doing these phone calls to property owners, would really actually encourage you to use a print version of the survey, which I believe we might have provided to you before, and we'll share that again after this call, so that when you're on the phone with these property owners and managers, you're walking through the questions with them, you're actually jotting down their responses on that print survey. You can take any additional notes as well. So that way, once you're done with the call with them, you actually have that record of their responses, which you can then input into the online version of the survey, or you can share it with us, some of the who are the study leaders, and we can input it ourselves. We just would discourage you from trying to input it on the online survey while you're doing those calls, because sometimes the online survey there might be some technical challenges that come up, and we'd hate for you all to spend 10-15 minutes on the phone with that property owner or manager only for the survey to not go through, and then you've kind of wasted that effort. So really jotting down those notes on the print version of the survey, I think will make a big difference. So, and I know Kasia, during the last round of the study, this was a big part of how we got those responses back. So I think for those who feel like you haven't been getting the responses you might like, not to worry. This was definitely the most challenging part of the survey last time, and no surprise, it's tricky to get those surveys back again, but it really does take that persistence and follow-up to really get this done. So we really just appreciate, again, all of the efforts that you've been making on this. And some different tactical approaches can, I think, yield some fruit here. So we'll definitely open it up to any questions or comments you might have. But Kasia, if there's anything you want to share from your experience having done this previously that you think might benefit the group, I think now might be the time to provide some of those comments.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. I mean, I think, we started with email, trying to reach folks by email in terms of getting them just to take survey online. And then I know, once we had to start following up with phone calls, it was actually really helpful to hear from property managers themselves what some of the barriers were to taking the survey, whether it was, I didn't know what you were asking me, why you were asking me about this, or I had questions about how the information would be used, or just I don't have time. So I think the follow-up phone calls are actually a really valuable part, and really they are truly really helpful in getting some of those outstanding property managers to respond. But for folks who are sort of in the midst of collecting the survey information, we'd really love to hear from you how the process has been going so far. If you started making any of those phone calls, what you're hearing, and like Adi said, if there's anything that we could provide that could be helpful in getting some more responses in.
Thank you for that, Kasia. So yeah, we'd love to open it up and just hear a little bit more about folks' experience with the survey collection, or if you have any questions about what we're sharing in terms of kind of proposed next steps and maybe changing up that tactical approach, shifting from email outreach to phone outreach.
I would add my experiences in Watertown. So far, we've had 16 of 19 of the properties complete the survey. There are 2 others that have promised to do it in the last week, and only one of them I have not reached. And the last bunch of them, probably the last 2 that completed it and the 2 that promised, were all result of phone calls. And what I can say from the beginning until this point is that I keep on getting a positive response from them, that they are happy to do it. They want to be cooperative. When I get people on the phone, they apologize for not having done it earlier. And what I keep on hearing is the kind of things that Kasia heard in the prior studies, which is, I'm really busy, sorry I couldn't get to it. Thank you for reaching out again. So what definitely is true is they will respond if you give them the opportunity to do it.
Thank you, Larry. That's really positive and encouraging that that it does take persistence to follow up, but it's not a sign that a lack of response isn't indicative that these property owners and managers don't want to be part of the process, but they might have other things going on. And sort of the more you're able to kind of give them a nudge and complete that survey with them in real time on the phone makes a big difference, and they appreciate being contacted for the effort. Do folks have anything else they want to share about their experiences with the survey outreach, whether positive or challenging?
Yeah, I would just share that here in Newton, I think we've had a pretty good response rate overall, and some of the properties didn't respond either way, and that's why, Adi, you're going into the back end of the survey was helpful. Some of the properties didn't tell me that they submitted the survey online. So initially I would do follow-up and, was told, oh, we completed. Okay, so I think some positive news in that sense is that if you don't hear back, sometimes it's because they have completed it and just need to circle, that they've done. So having those kind of regular updates from MAPC on what on the back end, is, I think, pretty.
Yeah, thank you for that, Eamon. And again, like I've mentioned earlier, we're happy to, if folks have questions about which properties in your community have completed the survey, we're happy to run those numbers for you and provide you with the property name so that you can follow up with the folks who might not have responded yet. Anything else that folks want to share by way of survey gathering and completion?
So I don't want to dwell on that. When you provide the information of who's maybe provided the survey, would you be providing all the survey information or just the property name? Because I haven't seen anything about, but right, I have no idea how many people actually completed the survey.
Yeah, for the purposes of just who's completed the survey, what I've been sharing is property name and address. There's certainly a lot more data that we're capturing in the back end of the survey, and if folks want to see the more complete data for the survey responses so far, I'm happy to share that. But for the purposes of outreach and just tracking, just sharing kind of the property name and address is sort of easier to pull, is a easier lift, I would say. But if folks do want to see the more complete data, I'm happy to share that as well. Does that help, Elizabeth?
Whatever information you can share. So yeah, because I don't know at all, like, right. I have no, yeah, I don't know at all how many people I need to contact, who's done what, or so it's, yeah. So thank you.
All right, yeah, and happy to follow up offline as well. And at the end of this, you'll have my and Kasia's email, so you can certainly follow up with us directly too. Any other questions or comments about survey outreach? The last thing I'll just mention is kind of our final bullet point here is that if it helps, we can offer up a $10 Dunkin' gift card as an incentive for property owners to complete the survey. MAPC does have budget for this, and we would provide those gift cards to all of you. So that's something you all can keep in your back pocket if you think it would help. We would just ask that if you do offer up that incentive, that you make a note of which properties you're offering that incentive to, so that way we'll know how to get those gift cards out to the right folks. It is a little bit logistically complicated, but it is doable. So if you plan to use that incentive offer, just give us a heads up and then track the properties that you're offering it to, so we can follow up accordingly. So hearing no more questions or comments on the survey gathering, though, certainly if additional pieces come up, we can revisit it. Let's pivot into scheduling the parking counts. And so we definitely encourage folks to, if you feel like you've already gotten a good response from properties in your community, you can use the month of April to start pivoting towards this as well, even as you're also following up with those last few properties who you might want to hear back from. So the first step, of course, is to you want to notify these owners and managers who have completed the survey that you'll be conducting counts. So kind of we have a heads up sort of email template that you can provide with to them, and that you'll also want to make sure you're coordinating garage access to those on those properties if needed. Oftentimes in the middle of, if you're going in the middle of the night, those garages might need a key card access, or you might need to enter a code. So you'll want to make sure that you're coordinating with those property managers to get into those garages if it is an enclosed parking structure on the property. We encourage that the counts take place before Memorial Day weekend, because once summer hits, people are kind of coming and going, and you don't necessarily get that more accurate picture of what demand looks like on a day-to-day basis. And for that same reason, we also encourage that the counts should take place after 11 p.m. on a weekday, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday nights. So again, you're kind of capturing what parking demand looks like on a typical day. And We hope that this won't be the case, but this is New England, so you never know. But avoid conducting counts when there's snow on the ground, because when there's snow, that also complicates what the parking picture looks like. We encourage you all to notify local police about where and when you'll be performing the counts, just so no one is caught off guard or they don't think you're up to anything nefarious when you're out there visiting these sites in the middle of the night. And for purposes of efficiency, we encourage you all to plan to visit multiple properties in the same night, and to also plan your driving route in advance to visit those properties, so that you have all those logistics planned in advance for the night when you're actually going out. So again, we'll pause here to see if folks have any questions or comments. And again, Kasia, I want to open it up to you to offer any insight from the previous round of the study, because you were the one actually going out there doing these counts in the middle of the night and coordinating MAPC staff to do so. So we appreciate that you all at the municipalities are willing to take it on for this round of the study. But again, we'll support you in whatever you need to be successful in making this happen.
Yeah, I love to hear folks' questions about this part. I will just emphasize the piece about coordinating garage access and trying to do that as far in advance as you can, just because what that actually looks like could be picking up a garage door opener, getting a key code, or just getting confirmation that it's not, you can just drive through. So just leaving yourself enough time to do that piece, I think, is really important. And then also, to the extent you can, coordinating with other groups that are out doing the counts. I know when we did this, it was really helpful to know that there were 2 or 3 other pairs out in the middle of the night counting cars, so we didn't hesitate reaching out to one another at 2 or 3 in the morning. We weren't worried about waking up anybody. It's just, if possible, it's nice to have that level of coordination and just knowing others are out there with you. But yeah, would love to hear any questions that are top of mind for folks on this piece.
My question, Kasia, is do you have any rule of thumb for how many parking spaces you can count in an hour? I'm trying to get a sense of how many properties to schedule in a single night.
So I think the things that you want to consider are how complex are the individual parking facilities themselves? Is it just kind of a straightforward garage? Is it more of a sprawling surface lot where you have to kind of drive in and turn around? That's definitely going to take more time if you need to spend more time maneuvering at a given site. Obviously, the other thing to consider is just the total number of parking spaces at a given site. So the more parking spaces there are, the longer it's going to take to count. And the last thing, probably not the only thing, but just one final thing that's top of mind for me is also how far apart are the sites that you're trying to get to in a given night. Because, for us, if we could do up to 30 sites in one night if they were all in 1 or 2 municipalities. But if we had to go out to 4 or 5 communities and we were trying to hit maybe 10 sites in one night and they were spread further apart geographically, that takes more time too. So we did anything up to like 25, 30 sites in one night in one community, or 10 to 15 across 5, 6 communities, because we had to factor in additional driving time. So those are just the different factors that I would consider as you're planning out the overnight counts. And I'm happy to share more about that if there are more questions.
All right, I see hands from Amanda and then Elizabeth.
How soon could we start counting? Right? Like if for whatever reason we're able to coordinate very quickly, like, do you not want us to start until a certain date in April so that the counts are all happening within, a specific time frame? I know you don't want it to go beyond Memorial Day weekend, but could we start going out next week if we're able to coordinate that quickly?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. If you feel like you've gotten sufficient survey responses, that you all should feel free to go ahead and start coordinating and getting those counts going. And then certainly keeping us in the loop so that if you want to coordinate with others, or we can facilitate those coordinations. I guess the one point I would make is to avoid school vacation week, which I think is the 3rd week of April, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, just because I think, again, during sort of school vacation week, you might see it's not sort of like your typical parking behavior if people are traveling and stuff like that. But if folks are feeling like you've gotten good responses and you want to start pivoting into scheduling those counts, by all means, please do so.
So I just wanted to ask Kasia, like you mentioned pairs, do you think it's easier to count in pairs? One person drive, one person count?
Yeah, I feel really strongly that pairs are definitely easier. Especially because you can have the person who's not driving navigate too, and just like have your list in the order that you want to hit them ready to go. So both folks are counting usually, but just having one person in control doing all the writing down. It's not impossible to do it by yourself, but I know I personally wanted someone else with me in the middle of the various parking garages across Metro Boston. So yeah, I strongly recommend pairs if you can make that happen.
Thank you.
Kasia, were you counting the empty spaces or every space?
Very good question. And I think we're going to get into this a little bit in the next slide, but it's really both. We want to make sure we know how many spaces there are in total and how many of those spaces are occupied by vehicles or other things if that happens. But we'll get into this on the next slide in a little bit more detail on what the actual documentation looks like. It's a good question.
Okay. Well, then I'll ask a scheduling question. Eddie, you referred earlier to having the ability to give us information from the surveys. I think it's essential for us in scheduling to know exactly what the property said about their parking, because otherwise, we're not getting the benefit of, is it garage, is it surface, how many spaces, et cetera. So whether that is literally a PDF of the survey table or whether it is, some other format, I think it's important to get that before a particular municipality starts scheduling.
Yeah, happy to do that, Larry, and for anyone else, Amanda, who anyone else who's ready to pivot to the scheduling the counts and conducting them, we can get you that information.
And we'll show you guys an example of that in a couple of slides too, what that looks like, those data collection sheets and that information looks like.
I see a hand from Eamon.
Were there any in the initial study that you did a couple years back, was there any question concerning the data being that you did counts just once? Like, did people go ahead?
Yeah, no, we did hear from a couple people that, oh, you only visited each site once. Does that really, how does that affect the validity of the data? I think the fact that we saw a lot of similar trends between phases 1 and 2 and a lot of similarities across the various data points sort of speaks to the fact that we wouldn't have anticipated there to be very significant changes if we were to go back out for another night a couple weeks later. We also saw a lot of similarities across peer studies in DC and Chicago and Milwaukee. So these trends have kind of continued to bear out across various studies. So we heard that from a couple of people, but I personally don't think if we were to go out a second night, we would see anything significantly different.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. That makes sense to me as well. Just curious.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all for all these questions and comments. I think we'll take one more from Tony for the time being, and then we'll keep moving along. But certainly if you have additional questions, we can come back to them later, but we do want to make sure we get through the presentation content as well. So Tony.
In my particular case, we will have individual garage units on several projects that are on the list to be counted, where they're either like townhouses or other situations where there's literally, instead of it being a big parking structure with everybody parked in the same structure, they're separate individual garages. And I think it will be very difficult to get to confirm that there's cars in them. give that in some cases, it's a really high number of individual garages.
Yeah, I can just.
Tony, we meant to remove those from the list so we can work together on whether those should be included. We thought we had excluded those all.
Well, but some of them are projects where part of the project is literally, you know, garden flat style rentals, and other parts are townhouse style units. And almost the majority of our affordable housing projects have garages. So we'll see.
Yeah, if we can be helpful in taking a second look at any sites, do let us know. And I will say too, you know, if accessibility is ever an issue, another sort of proxy way of collecting this information we found is asking for how many spaces are paid for by residents. That's actually probably one of the most accurate ways to get this information. I don't know that would necessarily be the case at townhouse style development. So let us know if we can be helpful in sort of taking a closer look at any of the sites.
All right, well, thanks again, everyone, for all these great questions and comments. We want to keep things moving along. So moving into conducting the counts in the next couple of months. So before you go out and visit these properties, you'll want to create data sheets for each property you'll be visiting. And we'll provide a template for you all. And as Kasia mentioned, we'll have a few slides for you at the very end here that show you what those data sheets look like. So we'll explain that in just a few minutes here. As part of those data sheets, you'll want to include aerial and street views to better understand the location of spaces on the site, as well as how you access the site. So you can do that using Google Maps aerial shots or Google Street View if you drop your locator on the map. And again, we can walk through how to do this in a little bit more detail, and you'll see some visual examples in just a moment here. As Kasia alluded to earlier, it's really ideal if you can visit sites in teams of two, one person driving the vehicle and one person who's taking the notes and doing the count. And that person who's the note taker can also help navigate to help you visit those multiple sites in the same night using the route that you would have mapped out in advance. For the most part, you likely won't need to leave your vehicle when conducting the counts. You can just do it from the passenger seat or the driver's seat, you know, so you're kind of cross-referencing that information together. And again, I'm considering having multiple teams out on a given night and sharing contact info so you can check in as needed. So, you know, you can have two teams in a particular municipality who are going out, maybe visiting sites in different parts of town, or even if you're working across municipalities, say if you have a couple teams in Newton and a couple teams of Watertown, you all can sort of decide to go out on the same night, or if it so happens that you all are going out on the same night and want to be checking in and touching base with each other, we can make sure to provide ways that you all are able to get in touch and coordinate amongst each other, or just check in for solidarity purposes in the middle of the night. As we mentioned, you know, you'll have those data sheets before you go out. When you actually go out, you'll want to be completing those data sheets and taking detailed notes and pictures. The more information you can capture, the better. So when in doubt, jot it down, we would say is a good rule of thumb here. And as Kasia alluded to earlier, you'll want to be documenting the number of vehicles that are parked on site. You'll want to confirm the total number of spaces that are available on site and note whether any of those spaces are allocated for specific uses or users. Perhaps some spaces are for handicapped, some might be for building management, some spaces might be allocated for car sharing services like Zipcar or for electric vehicle charging. And then you'll want to also document any unusual behavior or any obstruction of the spaces, whether it's double parking, whether it's tandem parking where you have people who are kind of parked in back to back in kind of a larger space, whether any spaces are obstructed by construction materials or dumpsters or anything like that. So, you know, anything you observe, the more you can document, the better when it comes to conducting the counts itself. So before showing you all the data sheets, I'll just again pause here and see if folks have any questions or comments, or again, if there's things people want to add from previous experience, let's open it up again here. I know that was a lot to kind of go through at once, so I can also go back to the previous slides if people want to take another look at it. All right, hearing none for the time being, again, we can come back to this at the end. Here's sort of just a preview of what the data sheets look like. This is taken from the previous study in Cambridge, but should give you an idea of the kind of data that you all will be capturing when you go out and do these counts. So up the top here, you can fill out just basic property name, address, and the municipality. Here is you'll want to pre-populate the data sheet with what the information from the survey. So number of spaces, how they're broken down. And then in these columns is where you'll want to confirm those observations. So this will be what's taken from the survey response. And then this is where from your field observations, these columns here. So this is pre-populated. And then when you go out, you'll verify it. And then I mentioned the aerial views earlier. So this is, you can just take a screenshot of a Google Maps aerial and really indicate where the parking is. These lines outlined in red, the different driveways, the different roadways within the site. So this will help orient you when you get there. And then the street view in terms of what that access actually looks like. So this is just a Google Street View photo. So this can help. So even if you're not able to physically visit the site, or you might not be familiar with the site in advance, taking those aerial views and street views will help familiarize yourself with the site. And then you'll also want to include that with the data sheet, so you know what to expect when you get to the site. And so with that, we just once again want to thank you all for your engagement and for showing up today. And we'll take any additional questions and comments you have before calling it an afternoon. So again, thank you all so much for all the hard work you've put into this study and for the work that's coming ahead. Any questions or comments based upon what we've shared, or anything else folks want to share from your experiences so far?
One question I had was, when you conducted this study initially, the first round, did you find any delays between when you reached back out to the property managers to confirm a date and time to do the counts, or were the property managers pretty responsive?
Most were pretty responsive, I would say, particularly those where there was a garage site where we needed to coordinate access. Most folks were pretty responsive in terms of explaining to us how that would be possible, or if it wasn't, other ways we could collect that data. So most people generally were pretty responsive, I would say.
So we could just kind of thinking through, probably allocate a week when we reach back out with a suggested date and time, and then getting the, property manager when we do that, and then actually to do. You think that's a good estimate?
Yeah, I think your audio cut out a tiny bit, but I think you mentioned reaching out about a week in advance, and I think, yeah, I think generally that's fine. Hopefully, generally the coordination for the garage sites isn't overly complicated. The only thing to keep in mind is, like, if you have to pick up a garage door opener in advance, just budgeting a little extra time to ideally pick it up the day of and drop it off the following day. I would say a week should be okay.
And Kasia, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think from what I recall from what you've shared from the previous study, it's not that you were necessarily nailing down a specific date and time to visit particular properties. It was sometimes more of kind of a heads up, thank you for completing the survey. We'll be coming through sometime in the next week. It wasn't necessarily that you had to schedule a specific date and time in all instances. Is that right?
Yeah, and you all will see this in the template email that we have, but we generally framed it as, thank you for participating as part of the next part of our methodology. We're planning to do the overnight counts on this date. This is kind of the general time range we plan to be out, and then an additional follow-up within that email to coordinate garage access. So I would definitely pick the date that works for you, and then you let the property managers know. Save yourself the additional scheduling for sure.
Great, thanks for that, Kasia. Anything we can do to make this process easier for you all. So lead with what works for you all, and then if they kind of want to get into nitty-gritties of scheduling, you can cross that bridge if and when it comes to that. But definitely lead with what works for you, and then hit the ground running. Any other questions or comments or experiences folks want to share? Again, I know this is a lot of information in a short period of time. So if additional questions come up after the fact, you can definitely reach out to us and we can address those over email or follow up as well. Anything else we can clarify while we're on the screen with all of you today?
Yeah, actually, Addie, we're ready to schedule. And so if we could get the information about the individual developments, that would be great. And it may be that there are some others who are at that stage also to schedule. And so it may be helpful to you to hear that now.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate that. So yeah, I can definitely pull some of that more, start pulling for folks who are ready to start doing the counts and scheduling some of that more detailed information that can help you set up those visits and that site access.
I'm really sorry if I missed this. Are there any instances where taking photos would be helpful? I'm sorry if you already went over this and I just totally didn't hear it.
No, yeah, photos are great, especially if it's like an unusual situation, if there's double parking. I know last time around we encountered some risers, which presented kind of an unusual question about how do we count the number of spaces. So if you think it looks unusual, or if the tandem spaces are occupying like more than 2 vehicles, anything that you think looks unusual, it's worth documenting. It's definitely better to have more information, and then we can kind of sort through it after the fact than trying to remember, oh, what was that I saw at the garage at 2 in the morning. So yeah, err on the side of documentation for sure.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Report too.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kasia and Naveen. I don't think we had touched upon photos. So after we wrap this up, I'll update the presentation to make a note of that before we share it out with all of you as a reference and a resource. Anything else folks want to ask or comment upon before we wrap up today? Well, hearing none, I think we can release you all for your Thursday evening a few minutes before 5 o'clock today. So I just want to thank you all so much again for all your work on this and for your engagement. I think with all of your participation, that it makes for such a strong study effort, and we're committed to supporting you as best as we can. So we'll be sure to stay in touch. You can definitely reach out to us, myself or Kasia, with any questions you might have if other thoughts come up that we weren't able to address today, or if things come to mind after the fact. And we'll follow up with a bunch of resources that we've alluded to throughout this presentation that will set you up for successful engagement and continued data collection and outreach. So once again, thanks so much to all of you for your time, and we look forward to continued collaboration as part of this study. And have a great evening. Thanks again.
Thank you.